What would you do if you were finally standing on the threshold of the life you almost died for, yet you were terrified that the ghosts of your failures might still come knocking at the door? Would you run? Or would you dare to build a sanctuary so strong that even your regrets couldn't tear it down? The screen opens on a scene of quiet, almost sacred industry. Jack is in the yard. He isn't wearing a suit. And he isn't barking orders into a phone. He is knee-deep in the dirt, his hands calloused, his shirt stained with the dust of the mountain. He is meticulously lashing together thick, green bamboo stalks. It is a slow, deliberate process. He isn't building a boardroom. He is building a wedding arch. But look closer at his eyes. They aren't the eyes of a man preparing for a party. They are the eyes of a man preparing to survive. This is the teaser of a new beginning. We cut to Tu Tien, standing inside the newly renovated farmhouse. She is holding a simple, traditional dress, a garment that carries the weight of history, of family, and of the woman she used to be before the collapse. Her hands tremble. She isn't just looking at a dress, she is looking at the woman she has become. The stakes? They are visceral. If this ceremony goes wrong, if the past interrupts this moment, the fragile piece they've clawed out of the earth could shatter. But why today? Why now, when everything is still so precarious? The camera pulls back. We see the yard transforming. It isn't a Hollywood wedding. There are no floral arrangements flown in from the city. The flowers are wildflowers gathered from the ravine, vibrant, messy, and real. The lighting is the golden, fading sun of the late afternoon. This is a wedding forged in the fire of their struggle. But there's a shadow in the distance, a familiar figure approaching the gate. Is it a friend? Or is it a reminder of the life that tried to destroy them? The story begins with the silence of the morning. Jack wakes before the sun. The farmhouse is quiet, save for the rhythmic breathing of the mountain. He creeps out of bed, leaving Tu Tien sleeping a rare, peaceful sleep that he spent months trying to guarantee. He heads outside, to the unfinished structure of their new life. He starts with the bamboo. He had learned to build this arch 3 days ago, failing twice, his hands bleeding as the stiff wood splintered. Today, he is faster. He remembers the boardroom presentations he used to give. The pressure of shareholders, the hollow victory of quarterly earnings. None of that matters. If the arch collapses, it's not a stock dip. It's a failure of his own heart. Jack's mother emerges from the house, wiping her hands on her apron. She watches him work, her expression a mix of pride and lingering sorrow. She carries a small, worn box. Inside is the silk dress Tu Tien will wear. You know, she says, her voice barely rising above the rustle of the bamboo. When I married your father, we didn't have a roof. We had a promise. You are giving her more than a roof, Jack. You are giving her the promise that you aren't going anywhere. Jack stops. He wipes the sweat from his forehead. I almost lost her, Mom. I almost lost her because I thought providing meant giving her things. I didn't realize until it was almost too late that all she ever wanted was the man who was present. The scene shifts inside. Tu Tien wakes. She walks into the kitchen, expecting the usual routine of the morning, but the house is different. It's cleaner, quieter. On the table sits a note. She reads it, and for the first time in months, we see the transformation in her, the lines of anxiety around her eyes smoothing out. She moves toward the bedroom, finding the traditional dress laid out with care. This is the fragility of their calm. For weeks, they have been busy fixing the leaks, planting the garden, navigating the legal battles that have haunted their transition. Today is the first day they have stopped to breathe, but the threat of the past is never fully gone. Just yesterday, the creditors called. Just yesterday, the whispers in the village continued. Suddenly, a knock at the gate. A sharp, rhythmic rap that stops Tu Tien in her tracks. She freezes. The door is slightly ajar. Through the gap, she sees a man standing by the bamboo arch. It is Mr. Phuong, her former father-in-law. The air in the house drops 10 degrees. Mr. Phuong, the man who represented the rigid, unforgiving traditions that nearly suffocated her. The man who had been the architect of her humiliation in the days before she found Jack. Jack rushes from the yard, his instinct immediately shifting to defense. He steps between the gate and the house. "What are you doing here?" Jack demands, his voice low, dangerous. "We told you, we're done. Whatever you want, whatever you're here to take, it's not here." Mr. Phuong stands his ground, though he looks smaller than Tu Tien remembers. He isn't wearing his usual fine clothes. He is dressed in simple, worn fabrics. He holds a small, wrapped bundle in his hands. He looks at Jack, then past him, spotting Tu Tien standing in the doorway, her hands clutching the edges of the silk dress. "I didn't come to take," Mr. Phuong says, his voice gravelly, lacking the bite it once had. "I came to witness." Tu Tien steps out from behind Jack. Her heart is hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. "Witness what?" "I heard," he says, gesturing toward the makeshift decor in the yard. "I heard that you are making a life here. I heard that you are building something that doesn't depend on the approval of people like me." Jack stays alert, his hand gripping the bamboo support pole, ready to break it if he has to. "You have no place here. You spent years tearing her down. You don't get to be a guest at the restoration." "I know," Mr. Phuong says, his head bowing slightly. "I lost my son, and in the process, I lost my perspective. I spent my life guarding a legacy that turned out to be a tomb. When I saw what you were doing, how you came back from the total loss of everything, it made me realize that I was the one who was poor." He holds out the bundle. It's an old, wooden box, inlaid with mother-of-pearl. It's a family heirloom, something that once belonged to Tu Tien's lineage before it was seized by her previous family. "This belongs to you, Tu Tien. Not to the family, to you. I have spent years keeping it, thinking it was a token of power. It's just an object. You deserve the power to choose your own life." The tension in the yard is thick, almost suffocating. This is the moment of reversal. The audience expects a confrontation, a scene of shouting and rejection. Instead, they get something far more painful. A quiet, humiliating surrender from the villain of their past. Tu Tien walks forward. Her steps are heavy, not with fear, but with the weight of memory. She takes the box. She doesn't open it. She just holds it. "Why now?" she asks. "Because," Mr. Phuong says, his eyes glistening, "I am old, and I am tired of being right. I would rather be happy. I would rather see you survive." Jack relaxes, though only by a fraction. He sees that the threat is gone. It hasn't been destroyed. It has been neutralized by the passage of time and the crushing weight of regret. "Stay," Jack says, surprising even himself. "Stay and eat, but know this. We aren't the people you knew. We are something new." The ceremony begins under the setting sun. The village has gathered not the high society guests of Jack's corporate past, but the neighbors, the farmers, the people who brought them eggs when they were starving, the people who helped them carry the logs for the house. It is a humble, beautiful congregation. The ceremony is not religious in the traditional sense. It is a ceremony of intent. Jack stands under the bamboo arch he built with his own raw, aching hands. Tu Tien approaches, dressed in the silk that links her to her heritage, yet walking with a freedom that is entirely her own. As she reaches him, the entire world seems to pause. The wind dies down. The sounds of the village, the distant barking of dogs, the chime of bells fade away. Jack takes her hands. He really looks at her, not as a partner in a tragedy, but as a partner in a victory. "I promised you a life," Jack says, his voice steady, carrying over the small crowd. but I didn't know what that meant. I thought it meant success. I thought it meant status. I was wrong." He pauses, glancing at the house, the garden, and then at Mr. Fuang, who stands at the back, observing with a hollow, respectful silence. "A life," Jack continues, his voice breaking, "is this. It's the dirt under our fingernails. It's the rain on the roof that we fixed together. It's the nights we didn't know how we'd survive, but we chose to wake up the next morning anyway. You didn't just stand by me, Tu Tien. You built the foundation I was too broken to see." Tu Tien's eyes are overflowing. She looks at the arch, the flowers, the people who have become their chosen family. "When we were at our worst," she says, her voice trembling but clear, "I thought I was mourning the loss of a man. I didn't realize I was witnessing the birth of the real one. I don't want a grand wedding. I don't want the life we lost. I want this. I want the struggle. And I want the peace. And I want you, right here, as long as the mountain stands." They exchange rings, simple bands of silver that Jack hammered into shape himself. They are imperfect, scratched, and entirely unique. They are symbols of exactly who they are: battered, resilient, and unshakable. The "I do" isn't a shout. It is a whisper, caught by the breeze and held by the silence of the valley. As they embrace, the crowd erupts not into polite applause, but into genuine, heartfelt cheers. It is the sound of a community that has watched two people descend into hell and climb back out to find paradise. But the moment isn't just about the joy, it's about the reality. As the guests begin to mingle, heading toward the long tables laden with simple, homemade food, Jack and Tu Tien find a moment alone on the edge of the porch. "Did we do it?" Tu Tien asks, leaning her head against his shoulder, looking out at the vast, darkening horizon. "Are we finally on the other side?" Jack wraps his arms around her, pulling her close. "We're on the side that matters. The past can't touch us here. We've built a wall of work and love and truth. Nothing can break that." The reception is a scene of domestic bliss. The laughter is loud, echoing off the wooden walls of the new house. Children run between the tables. Mr. Fuang sits with the village elders, his posture softened, his face no longer twisted by the arrogance of the past. He isn't the center of attention, he is just another person, finally learning how to be a member of a community instead of a ruler of a household. In the kitchen, Jack's mother is teaching a neighbor how to make the specific dumpling sauce Tu Tien loves. The kitchen is warm, the air filled with the scent of ginger, garlic, and roasting pork. It is the smell of a home that is truly alive. The camera wanders through the crowd, capturing the faces of people who were once strangers but have now become the threads of a new, stronger tapestry. We see the struggle in their eyes. Too, these are people who have known hardship, but we see it eclipsed by the joy of the moment. They are celebrating not just a wedding, but the survival of a principle that no matter how much you lose, you can rebuild if you have the right hands to hold. As night falls, the lanterns are lit, not the harsh electric light of the city, but the warm, amber glow of firelight. The bamboo arch, now silhouetted against the night sky, looks like a gateway to a different world. Jack and Tu Tien slip away from the crowd for a moment, standing on the edge of the newly cleared garden. They look at the rows of vegetables they planted, the sprouts that are finally pushing through the earth. "What happens tomorrow?" Tu Tien asks. She is tired, her feet aching from the day's events, her dress stained with a bit of dirt from the yard. She has never looked more beautiful. "Tomorrow," Jack says, his voice grounded, "we wake up, we tend the garden, we finish the interior work on the house. We live, we just live. No more running?" "No more running," he confirms. "We're home." The final shot is a slow, wide pan of the farmhouse. The music is low, a soft, acoustic melody that blends with the ambient sounds of the night, the crickets, the wind in the trees, the distant, muffled laughter from the party inside. The house is a beacon, a small, illuminated island in the vast, dark sea of the mountains. It is a bittersweet ending, because we know that life will continue to be hard. The legal battles aren't entirely gone. The debts, while managed, are still a reality. The ghosts of the past will occasionally drift through the valley, but the perfect ending, the one where all problems magically disappear, would be a lie. This is a better ending. It is a real ending. It is the ending where two people finally have the tools, the strength, and the love to handle whatever the future throws at them. The story of Jack and Tu Tien is not a fairy tale. It is a manual for resilience. It is a reminder that the most significant weddings aren't the ones in cathedrals with thousands of guests, but the ones where two people, having lost everything, decide to marry their future to each other. As the screen fades to black, the light in the farmhouse window remains on a tiny, unwavering point of gold. The journey has been long, the cost has been high, but as the final credits roll, we know one thing for certain: they made it. They didn't just survive the storm, they built a home that could withstand it. And in that, they found everything they ever needed. The wind whispers through the valley, carrying the scent of flowers and the promise of a quiet night. The wedding is over, the life has begun, and for the first time, there is no tomorrow to fear, only a tomorrow to build. Fade to black, with the sound of a soft, contented sigh. In your own journey, when was the moment you realized that your life was truly your own again? Was it after a great loss, a new beginning, or perhaps a simple, quiet moment like this one? We often define our lives by our biggest achievements, but sometimes the greatest achievement is simply finding the courage to start over. Share your story in the comments below. Let's talk about the beauty of the rebuild, because we are all in some way building our own bamboo arch, hoping it will hold against the wind. Tell me, what are you building today?